These lights are so bright in my eyes that I can't see too many people out there. But I can only see the black ones. I can't see any white ones, you see? That's how far I've come. That's how far I've come. That's a long way, isn't it? We've all seen the mugshot. And you know who embraced it more than anybody else? The black population. It's incredible. You see black people walking around with my mugshot. You know, they do shirts and they sell them for $19 a piece. It's pretty amazing.
Oof. All right. Well, on the eve of the South Carolina primary, and while speaking at the Black Conservative Federation Gala, Donald Trump made a direct appeal to black voters by comparing his own criminal indictments to decades of legal discrimination that black Americans have faced. Here's more of what he had to say.
I got indicted a second time and a third time and a fourth time. And a lot of people said that that's why the black people like me, because they have been hurt so badly and discriminated against. And they actually viewed me as I'm being discriminated against.
So I will say that Trump has increased his support somewhat among black voters, but Biden still has the lion's share of black support in America. Now, do they support Trump increasingly because of his unfair criminal indictments? I would venture to say that's not the case. I would venture to say that if you actually speak to these voters, they're concerned about other things, including the economy, the migrant crisis. You just listen to them. But what's really interesting to me is that Trump has put himself in the same position as individuals who have been overly prosecuted, wrongfully convicted, whereas Donald Trump has done bad things and there's evidence proving that he's done these right things. He didn't have an equal footing with black Americans. I mean, we're talking about a guy who grew up in the lap of luxury, then proceeded to inherit $400 million from his father. It's a weird way of connecting to people, but we're gonna hear from a black congressman, a Republican black congressman, who defended Trump's statements. Before we do, what are your thoughts, Cenk?
We might have millions of people watching this show, but you can be the difference maker because we just need 1% of our audience to be paid members, and then this show can be around forever. So you can make that difference. Click join now. So guys, I'm torn on it. On the one hand, it's obviously ridiculous and racist, and when the one that I thought was the worst is what he keeps saying about, you know, when I got indicted and I got the mugshot, black people love me.
God.
Like you're assuming that black people are criminals and that they like criminals, and it's just, come on, man, come on. It doesn't get any more old school racist than that. Okay, you could, I know your spin on it, oh, they're the victims of injustice. Is that part of your regular stump speech about how black people in this country are being horribly mistreated? No, you actually say the opposite.
Right, I mean, he was very concerned about the Central Park Five and how they were wrongfully convicted, right?
Oh, right, no, he wasn't. In fact, he wanted them murdered. He wanted them executed.
After they had been exonerated.
You know, to be fair, the execution, he took a full page New York Times ad to execute them. That's when they were charged and arrested. Okay, later when they were exonerated, he said, who cares? They probably did something anyway. He's such a terrible person. He's like the worst guy in the world. And what the hell was that joke about the lights and black people?
Know.
I don't even understand it,
I don't
right?
know. Yeah.
So now what the hell's the other hand then? So those are all awful, right? Yeah, but Biden has gone from 86% approval with African Americans down to 50%. So it's not that Trump is gaining so much in popularity, right? As much as Biden is losing popularity among African Americans. And so now some percentage of African Americans are gravitating towards the Republican Party. You see it in the polling, not because they're like, oh great, the Republicans are criminals too, like us. No, you morons, that's not how they think, okay? But, and you know what, I'll do a quick side note on this too. There's some wealthy liberals who have the same assumptions. Oh, we're helping black people. How are you helping them? We let out a bunch of criminals. No, that is not helping black people, okay? So the question is, what were they put in jail for? Was it something unjust, like marijuana possession, or was it a serious crime that actually affects black communities more, you morons? So a lot of people share these kind of stereotypes that I can't stand. But in terms of actually appealing to African American voters, get a load of this shocking idea, Democrats. Try doing something. So when you say, I'm gonna pass voting rights, actually pass voting rights. When you say you're gonna fight for higher wages, fight for higher wages. I know, shocking. Since you didn't do any of that, that is why they're going, well, maybe they're Republicans, because we keep voting for the Democrats and we get almost nothing in return. So that's why they're finding a receptive audience, even in this monster. At least some percentage are.
So I want to go to Congressman Byron Donalds, who was on Meet the Press over the weekend and was asked to comment on Trump's statements. So Congressman Donalds invited Trump to speak before the Black Conservative Federation Gala, and he definitely defended Trump. So let's take a look at what he had to say.
The president was really just enjoying himself. It was a great celebration for Black conservatives across our country. But let's be very clear. Our economy is a mess. Our border is completely unsecured. These things are causes of major concerns for Black voters, like it is for every voter in our country. But then when you layer on the fact that, yes, this is political persecution from the Department of Justice and from radical DAs throughout our country, this is something similar that Black people had to deal with the justice system themselves. And so their look of it is real simple. Well, dang, if the government's going after him with foolishness, he can't be that bad, especially considering the fact that Joe Biden is terrible at his job.
Wait, but hold on. I thought the radical DAs were letting people get away with murder. Like I thought that was the criticism toward the radical DAs.
So now the problem is that they haven't let off enough criminals. Because why won't they let off Trump? And by the way, it's not Trump's, at least in this speech, it's not like he's saying I didn't do it. He's just saying, hey, I'm a criminal like I think you guys are. And then they're applauding. Jesus Christ, man. So how about we put the criminals that are actually criminals, did something bad, we put them in jail. We can't get agreement on that. Well, from the Republicans or the Democrats at times.
I know, it's crazy.
Unbelievable.
It really is unbelievable. And by the way, I should note that it's not the radical DAs who decided to indict Donald Trump. The indictments came from grand juries in all 4 indictments. But with that said, I do want to go to more of what Representative Donalds had to say about Trump. Let's watch.
Let me get you to respond to Biden campaign co-chair and former Congressman Cedric Richmond, who said this about his comments. Donald Trump claiming that Black Americans will support him because of his criminal charges is insulting. It's moronic, and it's just plain racist. How do you respond to that charge, that it's just plain racist?
What I would say is that Cedric is trying to play politics and use racial politics even now as we get into the general election. That's one. Number two, like I said at the top, the number one reason why minority voters in our country want to support Donald Trump is because he did the job of president. He did a great job as president. Our country was secure. The economy was great. These are all things that Donald Trump talked about Friday night. He also did talk about the indictments. What Americans don't want to see, especially Black Americans and anybody else, they don't want to see a politicized Justice Department. They don't want to see a 2-tier system of justice. They want justice to be followed. They want Lady Justice to be blind. That's what the American people want. That's what Black voters want. That's what everybody wants.
So Cenk, I'm curious about your thoughts on some of the issues that he's brought up, because while I disagree with the statements coming from Donald Trump and I disagree with Donalds providing cover for Trump's statements, Donalds did mention a few issues where if you actually take the time to listen to Black voters and what they're concerned about, they do mention some of those issues, including immigration, including the economy.
Yeah.
I will say though, when Donald says, oh, well, they saw the kind of job that Donald Trump did and they liked the work that he did, and okay, well then why didn't they reelect him in 2020? So that's a ridiculous statement to make. However, I mean, I've shared videos with you from these town halls in cities like Chicago where Black voter after Black voter gets up and they're enraged about the migrant crisis, for instance.
Yeah. So I forget exactly what number Trump got in the 2020 election, but it was in the ballpark of 10% from African Americans. I think it might have been 9 or something along those lines. So Donalds is just making it up when he says, oh yeah, they really liked him in his last term. No, they didn't, that's just not true. But when you talk to Democrats and you say, hey, crime might be a real problem and a lot of minorities in the cities are really worried / pissed about it, right? They go, no, they're not. Okay, and then you say immigration, because they did the busing to the big cities, that's also creating a lot of conflict. It's even creating some racial conflict between blacks and Latinos in places like Chicago and in other cities. And they're like, no, it's not. Oh. Okay, so both sides are totally denying reality.
Yeah, they are. It's scary, really.
And it doesn't help you to deny reality. But the only reason you would deny reality is because if you think, well, I know I'm not gonna solve the actual problem. I don't want to solve the actual problem, so I'll pretend it doesn't exist. Because if you wanted to solve the actual immigration problem, both Republicans and Democrats, you wouldn't do any of this. You would do a pathway to citizenship, you'd probably do a Marshall Plan for Latin America, but you would then actually say, hey, once we do a pathway to citizenship, sorry, but you can't come in. If you do, we're going to return you. We're gonna have a very quick asylum process. You would do a comprehensive plan to actually address the problem. Instead, what are we doing? The Democrats don't have a comprehensive plan. They're coming in through the border. They're doing catch and release. And then the Republicans are saying, okay, let's send them to Chicago, New York, San Francisco, etc. And then they're sitting there, hundreds of thousands of people. They can't get a job because they don't have papers. What do you think they're gonna do? They're gonna get desperate. Some are actually from gangs. Others are gonna get desperate and poor, etc.
Yeah.
And it's gonna create a giant problem. And then when we go to fund that problem, because we have to, then communities, and I've seen it with my own eyes in the town halls. They come and they go, wait, how come we've been sitting here in Chicago all this time, never got any funding? Now all of a sudden they're getting funding.
Can I give you a specific example? And I thought that this was a big mistake by the Democratic Party. In one of these Republican debates that we covered here at TYT, the candidates brought up the issue of the migrant crisis in New York specifically, and I don't remember which candidate it was. It might have been DeSantis, but one of them brought up the fact that students in the public schools during a rainstorm were forced to work remotely or take class remotely so they could use the campus as a shelter for migrants. And so what I heard from mainstream Democrats in regard to that issue is, what's the big deal? There was a storm, we need to shelter migrants. But guys, you also have to understand what that communicates to the taxpayers in that community whose property taxes fund the school, who, by the way, they've got to work. So the idea, like, it's not a big deal, their kids can just do remote learning during the storm. No, that is a major inconvenience that is gonna rile them up and get them really angry. And I understand that anger. You have to find a better solution than to just say, what's the big deal? There's a storm, we need to shelter migrants.
Look, honestly, I think the wealthy, all the people in power are anywhere from wealthy to super wealthy. I don't think they have any interaction with real people.
They don't.
Like literally
no,
none.
They don't. They don't understand what a big problem that is when you are you have to work, and now all of a sudden you can't go to work because your kids can't go to school because they have to do remote learning. That is a huge inconvenience.
So we've talked about the Democrats. I think they're totally out of touch, and they keep talking about black people like as if they're like they can't ask a black person, like they can't go and attend the town halls, they can't see the polling, they can't, etc. Right? They talk about them in this theoretical language that doesn't actually affect their real lives and take into account their real lives. On the other hand, you look at Trump. I mean, he's just such a mess. So in the midst of that same speech, he keeps talking about, I hear, and you saw part of it there, I hear black people love this shirt that I did. You know why he hears black people do this or that? Because he doesn't have any black friends. He doesn't know anyone black. He can't even say, hey, I was talking to Bob the other day, and he told me, look, I'm connecting to you because of the injustice that happened in the black community, etc. He can't even do one anecdote, right? Because he doesn't know a single black person. It's unbelievable.
They love my mugshot.
Yeah, and so the only black people he has around him are a bunch of ass kissers like Donalds and Ben Carson, and they're all groveling to him like Tim Scott. And at the end, he says about Tim Scott in this, he's like, I like Tim Scott because he doesn't talk much about himself. He talks a lot about me.
Oh my God.
And that's exactly the kind of black person that Donald Trump likes. Someone who's servile and he could use for his own purposes. So I hope you're proud, Tim Scott. Jesus Christ. By the way, he now probably is leading in the VP stakes if Trump thinks he doesn't talk about himself, only praises Trump.
100%.
Oh, Trump loves that. I'll be able to trick people pretending that I'm in favor of black people by having this guy serve me and all he does is kiss my ass, oh my God, Trump will probably love that. Meanwhile, no one hears from the actual people in this country.